welcome back to Lynchian Picks on Coffee Nick's Movie Picks, a members-only collection venturing into the dreamlike world of David Lynch films and black, damn fine coffee. You are listening to part 5 of 10, and in this episode, we're hitting the road with a wild at heart and weird on top discussion. Our black coffee pairing for today is the cold brew from White Hart in Lynchburg, Virginia. Please take a seat, stay a while, and let's talk David Lynch over some black coffee. Part 5. Wow. We are already halfway through and it feels like it, but it also doesn't. I'm basing this off of the previous series I did, the Gretathon, which you should listen to if you would like. And that felt like it flew by, but also lasted forever. I don't know. It's hard to explain. There's just so many moving pieces with this and everything. I guess it does feel like it's flying by, but it's just crazy to think that this is like technically on paper, this is the halfway point in David Lynch's filmography, because it feels like so much evolving happens after this point. And I think that is thanks to Twin Peaks, honestly, but we'll get into that. Speaking of that, there are some fun things happening next week because that is Twin Peaks week. So obviously, next week is the re-review of Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me. I previously reviewed that movie on my main channel, the main Coffee Nick channel. So you can go listen to that if you would like to prepare, or you can just go into this next review with a fresh mind. But next week is the re-review, and to celebrate that, because as you all know, Fire Walk with Me is one of my favorite movies of all time, and Twin Peaks is one of my favorite shows. To celebrate this big week, there will be bonus episodes for regular members on the Twin Peaks pilot and then Twin Peaks The Return. So the Twin Peaks pilot one will be released on that Tuesday, and then Twin Peaks The Return will be released on that Saturday. These will each be pretty short. They'll be about 30 minutes. So obviously I could get really into either of those things, especially The Return, but I'm going to cap myself at around 30 minutes. I'm just going to try to give my overall thoughts and interpretations. Maybe one day I can get more in depth with Twin Peaks, but it will only cost $3 to access these. You just have to subscribe to a regular membership for $3, and you can cancel it after that if you'd like, or you could keep doing it. That would be nice. That would be so lovely. And then later this week on the main feed, there will be discussion of the new body horror film Together. Very excited. I actually just got back from the theater watching that, and I have a lot of thoughts to share. I won't share them now, but there are quite a few thoughts that I would like to share about that movie. And sorry for all the scheduling stuff. I just needed time to relax. Is that a crime? Is that so bad? I needed time to relax, to scroll on my phone, to rot, and to dip my toes into the waters of the new Donkey Kong Bonanza game. I've only made it one world in. We'll save that for another coffee thought, but I'm in it. I'm in it deep right now. No pun intended. But that game is crazy. And guess what? I also caved in and I bought Cyberpunk for the Switch 2. Because I like to see, like, how does it do? You know, I want to see how it runs, because I've bought like super souped up games for my original Switch, and some of them ran surprisingly well, others kind of flopped. I want to see how Cyberpunk does, and I've been waiting to play that game for years now, waiting for the right moment, and this felt like the time. So I did it, and we will see. We will see. Okay, getting into the contents of this episode. Now Brewing is a segment reviewing coffee as black as midnight on a moonless night. And for this Now Brewing segment, we are actually returning to a coffee house that I reviewed before, the White Hart Cafe in Lynchburg, Virginia. If you have not heard me review this place before, it was previously discussed in the episode where I talked about the Penguin. I got an origin story latte there, which was fantastic, and I really enjoyed it. I was back in Lynchburg for my sister's graduation a few months ago, and I went back to White Hart Cafe, and I had another really positive experience there. And sadly, I don't really have any more excuses to go out to Lynchburg, so I don't know when the next time I'll get to go is, but I hope it will be sometime in the foreseeable future. But I did go there and I got this cold brew, and I was working from home that day. From home, I was working from Lynchburg in various coffee shops. This is the same day I went to Golf Park, and I was working from home. And this is a lovely place to work from home. If you're the type, I know I'm the type, if I'm working from home, I get like a little stir crazy just sitting in my house on my laptop all day. So it really helps to change locations. And this is a really great place to do that. I know I said this in the Penguin episode. I'm going to say it in this one. They describe themselves as like Lynchburg's living room, which I think is a really notable and proper goal for a coffee shop to have. To aim for this like living room vibe is really cool, and I really like that. I really like coffee shops that aim to make their atmosphere one of comfort, of warmth, of just kind of like community and enjoyment. That is another thing that I think kind of makes coffee and movies overlap really well. Because I don't know, my living room growing up was also like our entertainment room. So we'd watch movies, we'd drink coffee, we'd have guests over. In the same place where we would watch movies. So I don't know, there's a sense of connection and sense of community in these places that I really enjoy. And I like when coffee shops do that. And I like when movie theaters do that. Although I wish movie theaters were more aware of that and would aim for it more, because I don't really think most don't do that anymore, which is unfortunate. But getting back to the White Hart, yes, the atmosphere is great. It kind of, I've talked about like, you could have like this minimalist atmosphere and you could have this cozy atmosphere. It's definitely on that cozy side. It reminds me of the coffee shop from Friends a bit. Lots of like couches and comfy chairs and books and all those sorts of things, which I really enjoy. So the cold brew is really good. It's a good cold brew. It was great, refreshing. It had kind of like this nutty aftertaste. It's a little bit more bitter for those that enjoy that in their coffee, a little bit more acidic. Definitely packed a punch, which I think if you're getting black cold brew, that's what you're looking for. So I think that makes this a really good cold brew. But the thing that I really want to talk about is the food, because I did not have any food there last time, but I did this time. I also came here for lunch, and I ordered a sandwich called the Bird. And the Bird is oven roasted turkey, mixed greens, tomato, chipotle bacon, and house made herb mayo served on a warm Kaiser roll. Or you can get it wrapped in a flour tortilla. I got it on the roll. I was not expecting much when it came to the sandwich, but it is really, really good. There were so many different flavors in this sandwich, and it tasted very fresh. And I was also worried that it wouldn't go well with the coffee, but it really did. The smoothness of the coffee really matched the kind of like flavors and the spice of this sandwich. And it was also paired, they had house made hot honey sauce the day that I went, and that went really well with the coffee as well. I feel like cold brew is just a great coffee to have with a meal because it kind of is a blank slate. It's very strong, but it just pairs very nicely with so many different things. I'm a big fan of black cold brew. That is like my, most of you may know, but that is like my go-to coffee drink if I'm going to any place. So overall, I once again give the White Hart Cafe and their cold brew and food, the bird, a Nick pick. I really enjoy this place. I really enjoy the atmosphere. I really enjoy the service. They have great staff, very kind and outgoing. It's great. This place definitely seems like the local watering hole, so to speak. So if you're ever in the Lynchburg area or if you're new to that area, definitely check out this place. It's really great. Also, I reviewed Ironclad Coffee Roasters on the Bring Her Back episode, which was also in Lynchburg, which, if you're in the area, that is another place you want to try. So those two places are a must. So Nick Pick, really love this place, and I really hope I get to go back sometime soon. Up next is The Coffee Thought, which is a segment dedicated to voicing my many incoherent thoughts over a lovely cup of coffee. So now that we have our coffee in hand, I have something that I'd like to talk about or ponder with you all before we get into our movie, of course. And, I think most of my listeners do live in the DMV, whether it is anywhere in Virginia, Maryland, or the district, which is what DMV stands for. If you do live in one of those three places, I am sure you've noticed how, to my dismay, every single day when I leave work, not a minute too soon, it starts raining, torrential downpour, winds, water, the elements, pieces of earth, chunks of earth flying at me. Not really, but you know what I mean. It's humiliating. And in the morning, when I get up to go to work in the morning, it's bright and sunny or it's cloudy and there's not really a thought that comes up that say, oh, it's going to be like hurricane monsoon season this afternoon. But it does do that, and it is always at like 5 to 5:30 on the dot. And I know it is the summer, and I know that this area has like a very temperamental weather pattern. But why is it that this happens when I'm leaving work and not when I'm waking up in the morning? Why did I just spend 8 hours sitting at a desk, staring at a screen, and then I'm free for the day, and now it starts raining, and I'm locked in for the rest of the night, inside, indoors, staring at more screens? Maybe that's my fault for not having a hobby that does not involve a screen. I mean, podcasting, movie watching, video games, TV shows, all of that, it's a screen. Maybe I need to crack open a few more books. Maybe I need to get into crocheting, shoe shining, athletic swimming, or I don't know, bocce ball. I don't know. What hobbies do people have these days? Maybe I need to pick up one of those, but I don't know. I spent so much time in the office today sitting my arse down on a chair. What if I want to go out and enjoy what little sunshine we have left? So all of this got me thinking, why is it that it always rains in the late afternoon and never the early morning? Do you know? Because I don't know. What is it that causes that? So, for today's coffee thought, we're going to look that up. We're going to learn something together. And I know you're rolling your eyes right now. Ugh, do we have to? Yes, we have to. Yes. Aren't you curious too? Don't imagine this. You wake up to the soft pitter-patter of rain on your window, to the creaking ceiling as wind blows by. You slowly open your eyes and you see it's dark outside. You're under the warm covers. You have your white noise machine humming in the background. You get up and it's still dark. You turn on a light and it's warm and yellow light. You get shower and you're still sleepy. Maybe you listen to like Nora Jones in the shower, or what's her name? Give a Little Lady, Leave the Light On. Maggie Rogers. Maybe you do that. You make a breakfast and it's still kind of stormy out. I don't know. That is just like an immaculate way to start your day, I think. But ending your day with a thunderstorm, I don't know. That just like sets me off a bit. And it's like I have to walk home. I mean, maybe some of you don't have to walk home, but like I have to walk to the metro and then walk from the metro to my house in this rain. So let's see. Why is it? Why does it rain? Oh, the Google searches. Why does it hurt when I poop? Why does it hurt when I have sex? Why does it? Oh my gosh. Those are suggestions. I've never looked those up, but maybe it thinks I would. Okay. What was I talking about? Why does it rain more in the afternoon? Search. No AI overview. None. Why does, this is from reddit.com on the subreddit No Stupid Questions by spice_cadet_. Why does it typically rain later in the day? And this person says, quote, I live on the East Coast in the continental northeast portion of the US. Me too. I am not kidding when I say 4 out of the 5 days it's supposed to rain, it starts as soon as I get off fucking work. If it's going to rain, it's almost always seems to start around 5 p.m. Spice Cadet. Let's proofread. I'm thinking lake effect from the Great Lakes. The timing is near consistent, so I'm curious if there's an actual reason or if I'm just not made to enjoy the summer weather. It's seriously pissing me off. Work all day in the office and it's beautiful. As soon as I come home, rain. End quote. Spice Cadet. Let's look that over before we hit send. Let's give that a little look over, a little glance before we hit publish. That's crazy to think that this could be a lake effect from the Great Lakes. I mean, the Spice Cadet seems very upset for the same reasons that I'm upset. So it's nice to know I'm not alone, at least. There's someone out there who feels what I feel. Wow, the internet's such a special place. Okay, Hip013 says, quote, I'm not sure, but I don't have the same experience. When I live in the Midwest, it seems pretty sporadic. Sometimes it will rain later in the day. Other times it will rain only in the morning. And other times it will rain only in the middle. Why the fuck? Why would you post that? Like, what are you contributing? What are you contributing by saying that? I'm not sure. I actually don't feel the same as you. Where I live, sometimes it rains, sometimes it doesn't. Like, what? That is so stupid. I'm sorry. He has a tag that says, generally speaking. Is he supposed to be like the designated stupid commenter? I don't know. Ridley_ himself says, quote, rain showers and thunderstorms typically result from warm, moist air rising a few miles into the atmosphere. It cools as it rises, causing water vapor to condense and fall as rain. The warmer the air near the surface is, the easier it is for the air to rise like this. The temperature at the surface is usually warmest in the late afternoon, end quote. Wow. That answers my question, I think. So it comes from warm, moist air rising a few miles into the sky, and it cools down a little bit as it rises, causing the water vapor to condense and fall as rain. That's cool. And the warmer the air near the surface is, the easier it is for air to rise. Okay, so it gets really hot and humid, especially in DC. I mean, this is a swamp. It gets really hot and humid. It rises into the air as the day goes on. and then falls as the air gets cooler up there. So obviously, like, as we get into the evening, not evening, but like late afternoon, it's starting to cool down a little bit as the sun sets, I guess. And then that causes the condensation and it falls. I think that's really cool. Wow. Okay, I won't belabor this anymore. I know you guys didn't come here for a science lesson, but I hope that if you are upset or pissed off, like me and my new friend Spice Cadet from Reddit, I hope that if you are also feeling those ways, that your question is answered and that you can rest easy at night. And I don't know, appreciate the morning rain more and the afternoon sunshine more. So, yeah, isn't that beautiful? Isn't that nice? Our next segment is now showing the Lynchian Picks, our film discussion segment diving deep into the dreamlike nightmares of David Lynch. We are on part 5 of 10 covering Wild at Heart. Star-crossed lovers Lula and Sailor go on the run in an attempt to escape Marietta, Lula's mother who attempted to assassinate Sailor. While on the road together, Lula and Sailor discover that beyond their life at home lies a reality just as dark. Wild at Heart is adapted and directed by David Lynch from the original novel by Barry Gifford. It stars Nicolas Cage as Sailor, Laura Dern as Lula, and Diane Ladd as Marietta. It was originally released in theaters on August 17th, 1990. Now, where do we begin with this movie? What do you all want to talk about? What do you guys want to talk about here? I don't know. I'll let the class lead this discussion. That's the hard thing. I enjoy so much when there is someone sitting across from me because when it's just me, I'm like, I don't know. What do y'all want to hear? So I guess I appreciate you all listening because that means you all, I hope you like what I have to say and you're not just like hate watching my show or hate listening to. But there's a lot to talk about here. There's quite a bit. I will start by saying that I do love this movie. I kind of think about David Lynch's filmography in like ones that are masterpieces, everyone loves them, like the stars of the show. And then there's kind of like this medium range where it's like they aren't as lauded or publicly loved as the other ones, but they're still good. And then there's like the not good ones. And this one, I would say, is the best of that middle category because people don't really like show their support for this one as much. I think that this movie has a few haters and it's kind of like a mixed bag. Some people aren't as like gung ho about it. And that's okay. Now, this movie you might have caught is based on a book. I kind of have a hard time believing that. I've tried to find this book and it has been so hard to find. But it's based on a book, and that book is even like a part of a series that have like a ton of books about these characters and the story, which is just crazy because you never hear about these books at all. And those are like really hard to find, and I don't know, maybe they're right under my nose, but I've tried looking for these books and I've had such a hard time doing so. If you've found these books, if you know where to find them, if I'm just being stupid, please let me know where I can go to check one of them out. I just want to see like how this turned from page to screen. But this movie is also pretty hard to come by as well. And I think that's why it's not as talked about because just people don't really have their hands on this movie. It is not on streaming services, which I can actually appreciate, I think. It's not really available on digital platforms whatsoever. You can't rent it or buy it anywhere digitally, which I appreciate a little less. And even the DVD is really hard to come by. There's no like Criterion collection of this movie. There's no like modern re-release. You can get the DVD. I think there's a Blu-ray, maybe. You can get the DVD, but it's kind of just like from back when this movie was originally released. So really hard to come by. I only have seen this movie because Alamo was showing it, and also because Harrison, who was just on the Blue Velvet episode, if you missed that, he loaned me his copy of the movie, and I was like, oh my gosh, thank you so much. I cannot wait to watch this. I'll give it right back. And I never did. And now he moved to Los Angeles, and I do not know when I'll get the opportunity to give it back to him. But I don't feel so bad about it because I think I enjoy this movie a lot more than he does. And I've also used the DVD. I've watched the movie on the DVD maybe 3 times now. So I think I've gotten a lot more out of it than he has. But Harrison, if you're listening to this, I'm so sorry that I have commandeered your Wild at Heart DVD. I will give it back to you at some point. But you also took that magazine, the queer zine. So we're even. We're even. Anyways, okay, the book. Now, I did a little bit of research here, and there are a lot of changes that were made when turning this from a book to the film. And of course, these were changes mainly made by Lynch. And one of the major changes that Lynch made was all of the Wizard of Oz references. The book never had any mention of Wizard of Oz in it, which I think it's really crazy because it is such a central element of the film. So it's really interesting that Lynch made this into like something that it just like originally was not. The whole plot line about Marietta killing her husband was also added in the film. The character of Santos was also added. I think Santos is a character that pops up later in the books, if I'm not mistaken, but I know that he was not in this first book at all. Now, the production of this film was very, very quick. Lynch wrote the script of this film in 6 days. Crazy. Even for adapting a book to a screen, I can't even imagine doing that. The film was shot in 2 months from August 1989 to October 1989, which I guess is kind of normal for a production, but that's still pretty quick. And all of this production was rushed because of something to do with the rights to the book. They were about to lose the rights, so they had to use them. To give you an idea of how rushed the production was for this film, on the way to Cannes, Lynch put the film reels for the final cut under the seat in front of him as a carry-on. And he didn't even watch the final cut until he got to Cannes. And when that was shown to its first audience, 2/3 of them walked out of the theater because of a very divisive scene that was later cut. And I can talk about that later. Also, to contextualize this movie a little bit more, this happened in the middle of the Twin Peaks craze. So David Lynch, the pilot of Twin Peaks, was happening around the same time that this was. To remind you, this took place, the filming, the production of Wild at Heart took place from August 1989 to October of the same year. So this was right when Twin Peaks was also taking off. And yeah, the same year at Cannes, multiple screenings of Twin Peaks were happening. David Lynch was on the cover of Time, and it was reported that the cast of Twin Peaks was worried that Lynch was abandoning their project. And I think that's interesting, especially considering how there are many Twin Peaks actors in this project. That's not everyone, though, so I'm sure that ones that were not in it were worried. In the end, though, the film won the Palme d'Or, and some say it was for industry-related reasons, as the initial reception of the film was controversial, especially among American critics. Europeans really liked this, though. To talk a little bit about just kind of like inside the production and less about the awards stuff, some cool little facts. Nick Cage asked to wear his own snakeskin jacket in the movie, which is the snakeskin jacket you see. That is his personal one, which I think is cool. He thought that that would match his character really well, and I think it does. And Laura Dern and Nick Cage went on a road trip to Las Vegas together to prepare for this role. And they both recall it as a really good time, which is sweet. And it's been stated before that these characters were thought of as Elvis and Marilyn Monroe. I think that's interesting as well because they are both like American icons in this very not dystopian, maybe dystopian, like dark version of America. And Diane Ladd, playing Marietta, was nominated for Best Supporting Actress for this film, which I think is absolutely deserved. And I'm actually upset that she did not win it. One thing I did not know is that Diane Ladd is Laura Dern's mom in real life, not just the movie. That is crazy to me. I don't know if that was common knowledge. Like, did I just not know that? But yeah. And then so it was Diane Ladd and Bruce Dern had Laura Dern. I just can't believe that. And now that I know, I'm like, I could kind of see the resemblance in them. But that's so cool that they got to play these parts in this movie together. Because of like the way the mother-daughter dynamic is in here. It's just cool. It's even more cool knowing that they are actually a mother and daughter. It is kind of crazy though, because just the way they interact in this movie, the characters interact, I don't know, just crazy to think about. Okay, getting into the contents of this movie a bit. I think the first thing that I've been talking about with any Lynch movie is it Lynchian? And that's been pretty easy for all of them. And this one is no exception. I think it is absolutely Lynchian. But one thing I did notice in this one is that it is a departure from what we've seen before, in that there is no white noise or wind sound effect happening in the back, as far as I can tell. Every other movie before this, and maybe even every movie after this, has that wind sound effect happening that adds a layer of mystery to the story. That is not consistent in this one, but it is present. There are many moments, especially when Laura Dern's character Lula is becoming self-aware, self-conscious of what she's doing, that the wind is added in. And at this moment, she always sees the Wicked Witch. She always sees her mother, and she hears like a laughter in the back that reminds her of the Wicked Witch, kind of like showing the control that her mother still has in her life. So I think it's very interesting. I'm sorry, I'm saying very interesting a lot in this episode. I am aware of that. Please forgive me. I'm going to keep doing it, I think. It's just like my vocal, I don't know, thing for today. It is interesting. It is interesting that the wind is now used more as a tool for a specific character rather than a way to set the tone throughout the entire film. It's used more for as a character device rather than a device to set the atmosphere. So cool to see how that's adapted. But one Lynch thing that Wild at Heart goes 10 times harder on is the symbol of fire. And this is something we'll talk about again next week when we talk about Fire Walk with Me, of course. But I even think that Wild at Heart has more images of fire than Fire Walk with Me does. There is so much fire in this movie, and I don't quite know what to make of it, I guess. So let's talk through it a bit. The film opens with a match being lit and like an explosion, and we're just staring into the fire as the credits roll. And then throughout this movie, pretty much anytime a character lights a cigarette, which is a lot, this is a Lynch film, anytime they strike a match, it is an extreme close-up of that match as we watch the fire. Anytime a character is smoking a cigarette, there's usually a close-up of like the cigarette turning to ash and the fire burning through the cigarette. There is a character that burns to death, Lula's dad, who was supposedly assassinated by Lula's mom, he was burned to death. And on the night he was burned, Sailor was also there at the house because he was Santos's driver. So a fire is also a pivotal moment for every major character in this film. So I think what we can say about fire as a symbol as it pertains to this movie is that it represents a chaos, I think, and a sense of being untamed or untamable. Um, there is sort of a wildness to it, and I think that it is used to describe the wildness of Lula and Sailor's love for each other, but it's also used to describe the wildness of evil, especially if we're talking about Marietta's evil. And I guess you could say the fire is used to describe Marietta's love for her daughter, if you want to call that love. I don't think you can, but it's a different, much more twisted type of love. Yeah, I think fire can represent multiple things in this movie and across a lot of Lynch's work. It represents this wildness and untamed emotion, and that could be either used for passion or it could be used for chaos and evil. Speaking of duality, that is definitely a Lynchian theme that is in this movie very much. And it's very apparent in the opening scene that has that one song. I don't know what song it is, but it's used in a lot of different media. And I always think of it in like a old American, like patriotic way, and it's like, gee, life sure is swell, like drinking a sody pop and working on the car and like going to the beach, and I don't know, just a very cheerful, patriotic, old school tune. I don't know what it is, but it is, whatever it is just abruptly and quite literally violently interrupted by the attempted assassination of Sailor by this guy that Marietta hired. And it ends in the manslaughtering of the assassin, which is incredibly gruesome. And it's in this really nice like hotel or something. I don't know where this takes place, but it definitely is like this place where a lot of people are, and there's kind of this upbeat tone, and it is interrupted by this horrific, violent, dark thing. The rest of the film is like this too. The log line of this movie is a love story in hell, I believe. So there is that duality here of something beautiful and romantic happening in this place that is described as hell, that is so negative and violent and awful. And you see that in every single place that Lula and Sailor go to. It kind of brings them nothing but misfortune. And there are so many people kind of placed in their path that are there to see them fail and to sabotage them. Some of them are put there by Marietta, and others just happen to be there by chance. And I really like that even the ones that happen to be there by chance are sort of, it's still like hinted that Marietta had like some magical way to get them there to sabotage them. And I think that that leads really well into the end of the film. I'm not done. This isn't the end of the review, but just while I'm on this subject, I think it leads really well into the end where you have this couple that sort of has to walk through fire, which I get the references that of the words I just used there. This couple has to walk through fire, through all these awful situations, and everything is working against them. Like they have every reason to give up on each other, and they do. Briefly, Sailor gets out of jail for the second time, and he kind of has like a moment where he's like, "No, I can't do this. Like, what am I doing?" But he goes back, and he still has a happy ending with Lula. Lula still has a happy ending with him, despite all of these things that happen to them, and despite literally everything working against them. They still want to be with each other, which I think makes this movie a really great love story. And it gives it that Lynchian ending, kind of like something that is so heartwarming and hopeful, but it is tinted in such a dark and bleak atmosphere. And look, I understand that in the year 2025, the world can feel a little bit bleak sometimes, but this world that David Lynch created in Wild at Heart is like a bizarro world. So, at the end, when you have this couple still choosing to be together, to love each other, despite this world that is, like Laura Dern says, wild at heart and weird on top, a world that feels like it's on fire. They're still choosing to be with each other after witnessing everything in that fire. It is like that Lynchian ending that is, hopeful. It is warm, but it is tinged in that, oh, something isn't right. That kind of dark tint over the top. And I really like that. And we will be returning to that, especially with our discussions of Twin Peaks next week. And speaking of kind of like this bizarro world that Lynch was able to create, he was not able to create this world just based on the story alone. Something that Lynch has done throughout all of his films that we've discussed now and throughout the rest of them that are coming is that he adds this flavor to the film through these strange abstract symbols, characters, moments, whatever. And none of these things have any real substance or weight on the plot itself. But I don't think that the plot or the overarching message, whatever message you choose to interpret, I don't think it would be as effective without those flavors, without that texture that Lynch adds into the film. And I think that this is just filmmaking 101. When you're telling a story, you want to add texture to it. You want to add things that don't seem necessary, but kind of tie in really well and hold up and bolster up your message. But there are so many of those things in Wild at Heart. I don't even know where to begin with all of those things. There's the car accident, which I think is the best example. When Lula and Sailor are on the road, they come across this horrible car accident, and a woman who is still alive, played by Sherilyn Fenn, who plays Audrey Horne in Twin Peaks. They come across her and they witness her basically freaking out that her mom is going to be upset at her, and she eventually passes away. And we have never seen this character before. We never see her again. But this moment has such an impact on Lula and Sailor, especially Lula, and it drives their characters for the rest of the film. There's other moments like this. I think of the scene where Lula and Sailor are out in the motel courtyard and they meet Bobby Peru for the first time. There's a lot of other characters that they meet out there, including a character played by Jack Nance. And they're talking to him, and there's a cowboy that looks like he's from Mulholland Drive off in the distance. There's these naked women dancing in the background that just aren't explained, and there's this man that flashes like a flare in their face like he's practicing magic. All of these things don't really add anything, but they kind of emphasize the perspective of our main characters, and that they are kind of experiencing a world that is very strange, unwelcome, and scary and weird. Especially, I think we're really being put in the shoes of Lula in these moments, where she is trying to escape something, but it feels like she's just escaping something dark to go to something even darker. Some other like weird textures in this movie that I want to talk about. I think I actually just have one. I think I just want to mention the moment when Lula and Sailor are at a bar in New Orleans and they sit next to a man and he starts quacking, and then he talks in a voice that's really high pitched and it sounds like he's underwater. Did I imagine that? Was that just me? Cuz as much as I don't know, like to talk about this movie, I've never heard anyone talk about that moment, and it's just it's like a fever dream. I don't know what it is. Speaking of how Lula's character is trying to escape and move on to something else, as I mentioned before, this film heavily references The Wizard of Oz. If you know David Lynch, you know that The Wizard of Oz is his favorite movie, and a lot of his films reference The Wizard of Oz in some way. But none of them reference Wizard of Oz quite like this one. I would say that this film is almost like not an adaptation of Wizard of Oz, but it is based on the material of Wizard of Oz. You have Marietta being the Wicked Witch. You have Cheryl Lee is in this movie and she plays the Good Witch. You have references to Toto and the Emerald City from characters. It's even stated that Lula's favorite movie is The Wizard of Oz. And, this is something Lynch does. It's something that a lot of movies do. Everyone knows The Wizard of Oz. It is classic American film, as you all know. So it's kind of just like this touchstone where you're able to reference it and everyone knows what you're talking about. But I think it's really cool how this movie is a subversion of the Wizard of Oz tropes that Lynch uses in some of his other movies. These characters are trying to escape something dark and a reality that is very harsh. And they take a trip on quote unquote the yellow brick road, but they're finding out that the world on that road is on, the world through this road is even darker. And they start to question, I think this is even like a line that Lula has. They're starting to question if there even is anything over the rainbow. Even though Wild at Heart is sometimes over reliant on the story and the tropes of Wizard of Oz, I really do enjoy what this movie pulls from that story and how it makes use of those ideas. And I really like the shots of the car driving on the road and how the yellow lines in the middle of the road make it look like a yellow brick road. I also really like the ending of this film where Sailor gives Pace, his child that he's just meeting for the first time, he gives Pace a stuffed lion. And that's something that I got from this viewing was I remembered that this movie starts in Cape Fear. And I don't know if that has any relevance to the film, but it made me think like, oh, this movie starts in a state of fear and it stays that way throughout the entire movie. And it's almost like even though that these characters are on the run, they almost never leave a state of fear. So when Sailor gives Pace the lion, he's giving him courage. My last few things, I kind of want to just do a rapid fire of some things that really caught my attention in this viewing and that usually catch my attention. I want to talk about Diane Ladd and her character and how remarkable and obsessed with this character I am, even though she is horribly evil. She is just fascinating to watch, and she is such a scene stealer, I think. I think it is really interesting how this interesting. Everything is interesting. Everything is interesting about this movie. What can I say? I'm fascinated when this character uses drinking or cosmetics to overcompensate in a way. And a lot of times she has like a martini in hand, and you can tell when she lies, she takes a sip of the martini, or when she's trying to cover something up, she'll take a sip. And also, there is, of course, that standout sequence in the movie where Diane Ladd, Marietta, is putting on lipstick and she just doesn't stop. And she just is red, is completely cherry red at one point. And I don't quite know what to make of that, but it is one of no, okay. It is one of my favorite images from all of Lynch's films, period. It's in the top 3, I would say. I don't know why. I am just obsessed with that image. I think it is horrifying. It is also just kind of campy in a way. It teeters both very well. Uh, I really like it. Grace Zabriskie is remarkable as well. She is unrecognizable in this movie. If you like her in Twin Peaks, you will be blown away by seeing her in this and how different of a character she plays. And that's also the scene that was cut. It was when she was torturing Harry Dean Stanton's character. There was a scene where he just got shot, but in the original version of the film, he was tortured for a very long period of time, and then there was explicit sex afterwards. And that is when a lot of people walked out of the showing. So that was cut down. I don't know if you can find that footage anywhere, but Grace Zabriskie, she is one of those actors that is just committed to the bit. She will kind of do whatever you tell her on screen. She is just really dedicated to the vision, and I appreciate actors like that. Speaking of, Willem Dafoe is another actor I always say that about, and he is also very committed to the bit in this one. His character is horrifying and disgusting and makes your skin crawl. Especially that scene with him and Laura Dern is just so so awful. It's just horrible. This character, uh, very effective, very effective, and his performance is great. But wow. Harry Dean Stanton is someone that I adore. Anytime I get to see Harry Dean Stanton on my screen, I am a happy camper. One thing I noticed about his character in this film was a particular scene where he was in the hotel and he was watching TV. And what he was watching uh, animals tear each other apart. And it reminded me of Twin Peaks The Return when Grace Zabriskie is just rotting away on her couch watching animals tear each other apart on screen. So it's really cool to see kind of like the original ideas, the seeds being planted that will sprout later on. Yeah, it's cool. But also, I think it's kind of the same message then than it is in The Return, where it's like you're sitting in this world of extreme violence, and to get comfortable, to like lay back, you turn on the TV and watch even more extreme violence. I think it's just an idea that Lynch is obsessed with, and he never really lost that, which is really beautiful. I think my favorite scene in this movie, and one that encapsulates this movie really well, is when Laura Dern is trying to listen to the radio and there's all of those horrible, horrible, horrible news headlines. And she freaks out and pulls the car over and asks Sailor to change the radio. And he finds the music and he like does a backflip out of the car and they start dancing so intensely, and like that heavy metal music starts playing. I just love this movie. It's so crazy. It's so much fun. I love it. I cannot recommend this enough. My last note is, why did Nicolas Cage have to have that fuck ass prosthetic nose at the end? The movie was like, it's so good the whole way through. And then for the last 5 minutes, he has to have, and for the very end, when he's like finally getting with Lula and he sings the song and everything, the credits roll over him. And you have to stare at this horrible, horrible prosthetic nose. This film had a budget. Where was the budget? Why was his nose gray? And they didn't even make it look like a broken nose. They just made it look like his nose was 10 times bigger and a different color and texture. I I notice it every time. It never gets old in a bad way. That is the one thing about this movie. I'm like, oh my god, I hate looking at Nicolas Cage's prosthetic nose at the very end. Oh my gosh. There is so much to talk about with this movie. I could sit here for hours and hours. There's Cousin Dale, the guy who always dresses in the Christmas outfit. He has the black rubber gloves, talking to aliens that get him to do things, and he put cockroaches in his underwear. Again, like it feels like texture to the larger message and story. But there are so many things in this movie to talk about. It is truly like such a crazy movie. I love it. I love it so much. I don't know. I just love the cast. I love the characters. I love the humor. There's still horror in it in some ways. Ah, Diane Ladd. Diane Ladd in this movie. Oh my gosh. Okay. I am obviously going to give this the Nick pick. Wild at Heart is a wild ride from start to finish. The film never strays far from its heart, which is a story about love despite the darkness of the world. The extreme dedication of this film's actors, including but not limited to Laura Dern, Nicolas Cage, Diane Ladd, Willem Dafoe, Harry Dean Stanton, and Grace Zabriskie, make this film something quite remarkable. While it is admittedly bogged down at times by its heavy reliance on The Wizard of Oz, its abrupt flashbacks, and its strange tone, Wild at Heart is a personal favorite of mine that's hard not to love. For me, at least. I love it. I love it. I love it. I love this movie. It's good. Is it perfect? No, because it has that fuck ass nose in it. But it has Diane Ladd covering herself in lipstick. So what more could you want? And it has a guy quacking at a bar. What's not to love? Come on, this is what you people came for, right? Anyways, if you want to watch this movie, if you have not watched this yet and just listen to me spoil the whole thing, you can watch this. You can find a copy by conning one out of Harrison. So, yeah, I don't really know how else to watch this movie. You could try finding the book, which I think is just as hard. Thank you for joining me today. This was fun. I had a good time. If you would like to follow along, if you're doing that, the next episode of the collection will feature a discussion of Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me, which is a re-review. I've talked about that before. And it is also maybe my number 2 favorite movie of all time. So just be ready for that. And of course, there will be more next week. There will be discussion on the Twin Peaks pilot episode. There will be a very brief discussion on Twin Peaks The Return. All of this will be released next week around... Am I getting my days wrong? Yes, no, next week. The Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me episode, Thursday, July 31st. The pilot will be Tuesday, July 29th. And the return will be Saturday, August 2nd. I said that all out of order. I'm so sorry. Join me then, please. And thank you again for listening to The Coffee House. I really appreciate you being here. Before you go, I would really appreciate if you could consider becoming a regular of The Coffee House for only $3 a month, which is how you access those Twin Peaks bonus episodes, and you get shoutouts on the main show. If you'd like to stay up to date on this show, please follow at Coffee Nick's Movie Picks on Instagram and at Coffee Nick on Blue Sky. If you like what you heard, please subscribe, drop me a rating, tell a friend. All of those things really help me. And a special thank you to Nathan Moore for creating the show's opening and closing themes. Until next time, I want to apologize to you gentlemen for referring to y'all as homosexuals.